I was dragged out of the courtroom with handcuffs digging into my wrists, my military jacket stripped off, and whispers spreading like wildfire through the gallery. People stared. Some laughed. Others looked away. But none of them knew who I really was, what I had done, who I had saved, or what I had sacrificed. I stood there, humiliated. And then the heavy courtroom doors opened. A man in full dress white stepped in. A 4-star Admiral. Everyone stopped breathing. But let me tell you how we got there. Before we dive into this revenge story, if you love true stories where justice finds its way, hit that like button, drop a comment telling me where you're watching from, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more jaw-dropping revenge stories just like this one. Now let's meet her. My name is Rachel Dawn. I served this country for 29 years. I wasn't just a soldier. I was a Navy SEAL, a sniper, a decorated officer. I fought in deserts, jungles, and mountains. I survived war zones, betrayal, and worse. But none of that compared to what happened when I came home. The story started 3 weeks before Christmas. I had just returned to the States after a classified mission overseas. Quietly. No parades. No welcome banners. Just silence. I wasn't expecting much. That's the thing about ghosts. We don't get homecomings. I moved into a small, dull townhouse in Red Maple Downs. Not the kind of place where neighbors say hello. It was cheap and quiet. Perfect for someone who wanted to stay invisible. And I had good reason to. When I came back, I found out everything I thought I had was gone. My bank account had been frozen. My house, the one I paid off before deployment, was in someone else's name. Even my dog Max had been given away by my stepbrother Travis, who said I'd probably never come back anyway. But the worst of it, my name had been wiped from the family will. Everything had gone to Travis, a man who hadn't worked a day in his life, who spent his days betting on horses and his nights picking fights at dive bars. My mother was long gone. My father, well, he always saw Travis as the normal one. Said I was too intense, too serious, too military. They held a family meeting while I was gone. Voted me out like I was a stranger. I didn't even know until I got the letter from their lawyer. The anger didn't hit me all at once. It simmered, like a slow, steady burn deep in my chest. I had faced enemies with AKs and rocket launchers, but nothing stung like the betrayal of your own blood. I tried to reach out, calmly at first. I called Travis. He hung up. I showed up at his place, and his girlfriend screamed like I was breaking in. Police showed up. They told me to stay away. The officer, maybe 23 years old, looked me in the eye and said, "People like you make everyone nervous." People like me. I wore the scars of service on my body. My left shoulder was rebuilt with titanium. My right eye had peripheral damage from an IED. My hands shook sometimes when I held a cup of coffee. But I was still Rachel, still someone who mattered. At least I thought I did. The final straw was when I went to the courthouse to speak to the family lawyer, a man named Harold Denton. He had represented our family for over 15 years. When I stepped into his office, he barely looked up. "You shouldn't be here," he said without emotion. "I just want to understand," I said, keeping my voice level. He opened a drawer, slid over a copy of the will, and pointed to the last page. It was all legal. My name was nowhere. And then he looked at me with that tired smile, the kind people give when they think you're broken and desperate. "Look, Rachel," he said, "you've done a lot for this country, I know. But this is a family matter. It's time to let it go." Let it go. He had no idea who he was talking to. I stood up slowly, adjusted the patch on my shoulder, and walked out without another word. Over the next few days, I started gathering evidence. I knew Travis didn't have the brains to pull this off alone. Someone had helped him. Someone who knew the legal system. That's when I found her, Delia Moore, a small-time paralegal who once interned for Harold. She had gotten close to Travis during one of his DUI trials. A month later, she disappeared from the law firm. Now she was living in a luxury condo across the river. No job, no income. Just gifts and fancy shoes. I wasn't stupid. I'd done recon in enemy camps. Tracking her was easy. I sat across the street for 3 nights, watched who came and went, learned her schedule. And then, one afternoon, I followed her to a nail salon. I waited until she sat down. Then I slid into the chair next to hers. "You're not as invisible as you think," I whispered. She froze. Her eyes darted to the mirror on the wall. "I'm not here to hurt you," I added. "Yet." "What do you want?" she hissed. "Just answers." I got them. Not all of them, but enough. She cracked after I showed her the photo, one I had taken of her and Travis exchanging envelopes in a parking lot. She told me they had forged my father's final signature, that Harold Denton had looked the other way, that Travis promised her half the estate if she made sure my name disappeared. I recorded everything, every word. Now I had ammo, and I planned to use it, but it wasn't enough just to expose them. I needed them to feel what I felt, powerless, betrayed, humiliated. So I filed a civil suit against Travis, against Harold, and even Delia. The courtroom was packed the day the hearing started. Locals were curious. A few veterans showed up, too. I stood in the back row at first, quiet, unnoticed in plain clothes. My lawyer, a scrappy young woman named Gina Wyatt, told me to trust the process. But the process doesn't always play fair. Before the judge entered, 2 bailiffs approached me. "Rachel Dawn," one of them asked. "Yes." "You're under arrest. Contempt of court." I blinked. "What?" They didn't answer, just grabbed my arms and yanked them behind my back. I didn't fight, not in that moment, but inside my mind was racing. This wasn't real. Someone had set me up, and they were trying to silence me before I even spoke. Whispers filled the room. Some people pulled out their phones. Others just stared. They marched me past the gallery, past the row of family who once loved me, past Travis, who smirked like a snake in the sun. My wrists were cuffed. My head was high. Then the courtroom doors creaked open, and the man who walked in made every mouth shut. Every eye snapped to attention. He wore the crisp white of the United States Navy. Medals gleamed across his chest. Silver hair, dark eyes, the walk of a man who knew what war was. A 4-star Admiral, and he was looking directly at me. The moment the Admiral stepped into the courtroom, the air changed. Even the bailiff holding my arm hesitated. The gallery, full of whispers and gasps seconds earlier, turned dead silent. No one moved, not even Travis. The Admiral walked forward slowly, scanning the room like he was assessing a battlefield. He stopped just a few feet from me and nodded once. Not to the court, not to the judge, to me. "Commander Dawn," he said in a voice as calm as it was commanding. "At ease." I didn't move, not because I didn't want to, but because the cuffs were cutting into my wrists and I knew this was all part of their game. Someone was trying to break me, but what they didn't know was that I'd been through worse. "Who is this?" the judge finally asked, adjusting his glasses. The Admiral turned. "Admiral Lawrence Briggs, United States Navy. I'm here on official business regarding Commander Rachel Dawn." There was a pause, like the whole courtroom was holding its breath. The judge looked rattled. "She's currently being held in contempt. Do you understand the circumstances?" "I do," Admiral Briggs said, "and I'll be addressing those circumstances immediately." The judge nodded. The bailiff looked at the other officer, then back at the judge, unsure whether to uncuff me. "Release her," the judge said finally. The cuffs came off. My wrists throbbed, but I didn't flinch. Admiral Briggs walked up beside me and leaned close enough for only me to hear. "You've stirred a hornet's nest," he said softly, "but you're not alone." Then he turned and walked toward the bench to speak privately with the judge. Meanwhile, I stood tall, staring down the people who thought they had beaten me. Travis looked pale now, his smirk gone. Delia looked like she wanted to disappear into the floor. Even Harold Denton was shifting in his chair like a man sitting on broken glass. I knew then, whatever game they were playing was bigger than I'd thought, but I had just gotten a powerful ally. Still, the road ahead wasn't going to be smooth. After a short break, court resumed. Admiral Briggs had left, but his presence lingered. The judge ordered a review of my arrest, which was coincidentally filed the night before by a private investigator hired by Harold, someone claiming I had threatened them during my information gathering. No evidence, no real report, just enough smoke to create a distraction. It backfired. The judge frowned. It appears this accusation was meant to delay or disrupt civil proceedings. We will proceed with the case. That was a win. A small one, but it was something. Still, I knew what they were trying to do, stall me until I ran out of money or patience. The thing is, I don't run. Over the next week, I stayed quiet, focused, and strategic. Gina, my lawyer, was sharp. Together, we pieced together timelines, financial transactions, call records, emails. Everything that tied Travis, Delia, and Harold together. What we found was disturbing. Harold had funneled estate money into 2 shell companies in Travis's name. Delia had notarized fake documents under a stolen identity. And get this, they had even filed paperwork with the Veterans Affairs Office claiming I was mentally unfit, hoping to disqualify me from challenging the will in the first place. It was a full-blown operation. Greedy, heartless, calculated. They didn't just want the money. They wanted me erased. We submitted everything to the court. And that's when the threats started. One night, as I returned home to Red Maple Downs, I noticed something strange. My front door was slightly open. I stepped inside, quietly, phone in one hand, my old military knife in the other. The house was dark, still. And then I saw it, my photo albums, shredded on the floor. Pages torn, burnt edges curling upward. Someone had gone through my life and destroyed what they could find. There was a note written in bold black marker, stuck to the wall with a kitchen knife. Stop, or you'll regret it. It didn't scare me. It made me angry. I spent that night sitting in the dark, going over every threat I'd ever received in my career. Taliban, drug lords, hostile foreign agents. Now this? From family? No, this wasn't fear. This was fuel. The next morning, I walked into court wearing my service uniform for the first time in years. The room went still again, just like it had when Admiral Briggs walked in. But I didn't need him today. I stood on my own. Gina began her opening statement, laying out everything we had found. The fake signatures, the illegal fund transfers, the forged medical evaluations. And when the judge asked for supporting evidence, we presented it all, complete with Delia's voice on tape, admitting to the fraud. The room stayed quiet, tense, uncomfortable. That's when Harold Denton stood up. "Your Honor," he said calmly, "I move to dismiss this case on grounds that the plaintiff has a history of mental instability, combat trauma, and violent behavior. We have reason to believe her actions are a result of unresolved psychological damage." I laughed out loud. Everyone turned to look. "You're seriously going to try the crazy veteran card?" I said, stepping forward. The judge held up his hand. "Miss Dawn, please." But I couldn't stop. "You think being tough means being unstable? You think standing up to your lies makes me dangerous? No. What's dangerous is how many people like you hide behind your suits and pens while stealing from those who gave everything." He banged the gavel. "Order." I stepped back, biting down on my rage. The judge looked shaken again, but this time not at me, at Harold. "I will review this matter further," he said. "Court is adjourned until Monday morning." As I walked out, Travis brushed past me. "You think you're tough," he muttered. "You're not." I didn't even turn to look at him, just said, "You'll see." But that night, I got another surprise. I was out back, feeding a stray cat that had started visiting my porch, when headlights lit up my yard. A black SUV stopped at the curb. Another one pulled up behind it. 5 men in suits got out. One of them knocked on my door. "Miss Rachel Dawn?" he asked. Yes, I said, wary. We need you to come with us. You're wanted for questioning regarding a federal investigation. I blinked. Federal. Yes, ma'am, he said. We have orders to detain you. I stood frozen for a second, heart pounding. This wasn't local police. This wasn't Travis's people. This was something bigger. Before I could ask another question, they stepped forward. And this time the cuffs came out again. The cold metal touched my wrists again. This time they were tighter. I kept my eyes on the lead agent as they guided me down the steps of my own porch. The neighbors peeked out from behind curtains, probably thinking I was some criminal. Again. But these men weren't from the local force. Their SUV didn't have markings. Their suits were clean, polished, professional. And their faces? Blank. They weren't here on some Travis scheme. This was real federal business. What is this about? I asked, trying to keep my voice calm as they loaded me into the back of the SUV. You'll be briefed once we arrive, the one in the front seat replied without turning around. Am I under arrest? You're being detained for questioning. Not exactly an answer. The drive was long and quiet. We crossed 2 counties before pulling into an underground garage beneath a tall glass building. No signs, no logos, just a keycard access gate and a lot of cameras. I'd seen places like this before. Secure, off-grid, usually where government agencies ask the kind of questions that don't make it into official files. I was led through 2 security checkpoints and then into a room with a steel table, 2 chairs, and a one-way mirror. They uncuffed me and left. I waited. 10 minutes passed. Then 20. Finally, a woman in a navy blue blazer stepped in. She looked like someone who didn't waste time. "Commander Dawn," she said, sitting across from me. "I'm Special Agent Colleen Price, Homeland Security." "Then you already know I haven't done anything wrong," I replied. She gave a small nod. "Correct. You're not under investigation. In fact, we're the ones who've been watching the people targeting you." That made me sit up straighter. "Travis?" I asked. "Harold." She pulled out a folder and slid it toward me. Inside were surveillance photos, bank statements, flight logs, even wire transfers from shell accounts I hadn't discovered yet. "Your stepbrother has been laundering money through offshore accounts. But the real reason we're involved is this." She flipped to a page showing a scanned document marked top secret. It had Harold Denton's signature. "This file," she continued, "was part of a classified operation that someone tried to bury. We believe your name was wiped from multiple government systems, not just estate records." My mouth went dry. "You think they tried to erase my military records?" She nodded. "We're still investigating the motive, but someone wanted you gone. Not just out of the family, out of existence." I leaned back, stunned. "Why?" I asked. "That's what we're going to find out. But to do that, we need your help." The idea of working with the feds again made my gut twist. I'd been used before, tossed aside after missions ended. What kind of help? I asked cautiously. "We want you to keep pushing the civil case. Don't back off. Keep applying pressure. Let them think they're still in control. Meanwhile, we'll monitor everything behind the scenes." "You want me to be bait?" She smiled faintly. "You're the best kind." I sat in silence for a moment, my heart pounding slower now. The fog was lifting. What I thought was just a greedy betrayal by family was deeper, tangled in corruption, fraud, maybe even treason. It wasn't just about money anymore. It was about justice. I agreed. They let me go with a burner phone and a number I could call anytime. And a warning, they'll strike again. They're getting desperate. Back in Red Maple Downs, things were quiet. Too quiet. But I wasn't scared. I started preparing. Not weapons. Not traps. Just truth. I spent every night collecting more dirt. I built timelines, connected dots, and I documented everything. Every time someone called my phone and breathed heavily without speaking. Every odd car that circled my block. Every time someone rang my doorbell and ran off. It was all evidence now. Then, one night, I got a call from Gina. "Rachel, you need to come in," she said, sounding nervous. I drove to her office, just outside of Langston, where she was waiting with a thick envelope in her hand. "Someone dropped this off for you." Inside were copies of emails between Harold and a state judge, the same judge handling my case. They were planning to dismiss my suit quietly. "What is this?" I whispered. "Proof," she said. "They've been manipulating the system from the start." I sat down hard in the chair. This wasn't a civil dispute anymore. This was criminal. I handed over the emails to Special Agent Price the next morning. Within hours, she got a federal judge to freeze all of Travis's accounts and opened an investigation into Harold's firm. The next hearing was just days away, but I didn't expect what came next. 2 nights before court, I was walking back from the grocery store when I noticed a black car parked near the alley behind my building. I felt the hairs on my neck stand up. I didn't run. I walked slow, casual, but as I approached my building, I saw a figure step out of the alley. He was tall, hoodie up, face in shadow. He didn't speak, just reached into his jacket. I moved fast. Years of training took over. I dropped my bags, dubbed behind a concrete planter, and drew the small knife I always kept in my boot. I crouched low, heart pounding, eyes scanning. He stepped forward, holding something in his hand. Not a gun, a camera. Snap, flash. He took another photo, and then he ran. I chased him for 2 blocks before losing him near the train tracks. Back at my place, there was an envelope taped to my door. Inside was a photo of me in court in cuffs, and under it the words, "This isn't over." The next morning, I showed the photo to Agent Price. She frowned. "They're documenting everything," she said. "This isn't intimidation. This is planning." "For what?" She hesitated. "For your destruction, legally, financially, maybe even physically." That's when we knew they were going all in. And the next hearing? That was the moment they chose to make their biggest move yet. The courtroom was buzzing. Whispers followed me as I walked in with Gina at my side. Cameras had arrived. Reporters were outside. The gallery was packed. Delia sat stiffly in a black dress, hands trembling. Travis looked smug again, despite everything. And Harold? He smiled like he had a new ace up his sleeve. When the judge called order, everything went quiet. "We've received a motion from the defense," he said, adjusting his glasses. "They are filing to have Commander Rachel Dawn held in contempt again." I blinked. "What now?" Gina said out loud. The judge read from a new file. "There is video evidence allegedly showing Commander Dawn threatening the defendant with physical harm. It was submitted anonymously." I stood up. "That's not true." Harold raised a hand. "We have the footage, Your Honor." The judge nodded. "Play it." The screen lit up. A grainy clip showed me, from behind, walking into a parking garage. Then a low-quality audio recording of a female voice saying, "If you don't fix this, I'll make sure you pay." The gallery gasped. "That's not me," I said. "That's not even my voice." But the judge didn't look convinced. "Until we review this fully, you'll be remanded to holding. Bailiffs." I felt a familiar grip on my arms. The cuffs locked again. I stood there, in full view of the courtroom, being led away like a criminal. And that's when it happened. The courtroom doors slammed open, and 3 people walked in. One in a black suit, one in a Homeland Security jacket, and the third, Admiral Briggs. Again. Only this time, he wasn't just standing for me. He was flanked by 2 more high-ranking officers, and they weren't here to observe. The courtroom was frozen. Time itself seemed to hold its breath. Admiral Briggs stepped forward again, but this time the silence wasn't just respectful, it was fearful. Behind him stood a stern-faced officer in a crisp Homeland Security windbreaker and another man in full Marine dress blues. All 3 walked with power, with history. They weren't here by accident. The judge's mouth opened slightly, unsure whether to speak or salute. Admiral Briggs didn't wait for permission. "Your Honor," he said, voice calm but sharp as a blade, "this hearing is now under federal observation. Any further actions against Commander Rachel Dawn are to be cleared through my office and the Office of Inspector General." The judge swallowed. "Admiral, this is highly irregular." "Not if you've been paying attention," the agent beside him added, stepping forward. "Special Agent Colleen Price, Homeland Security. We've just submitted a motion to have this case removed from civil court entirely. There is evidence of a coordinated fraud, obstruction of justice, and possible witness tampering." All eyes turned to Harold, and then to Travis. Delia looked like she might faint. The judge rubbed his forehead and waved at the bailiff. "Remove the cuffs," he muttered. This time they didn't hesitate. I rolled my wrists as the steel came off. The bruises were darker now, the skin raw. But I stood tall. "Commander Dawn," Admiral Briggs said, facing me, "you're not alone. Not anymore." The judge called for a recess, but the courtroom stayed loud, reporters whispering, family members crying, and Travis storming out the side door like a cornered animal. Gina grabbed my arm. "Did you know they were coming?" I shook my head. "Not this time." That afternoon, we all met in the federal building 2 hours outside of town. There, I saw everything, the full web of corruption, exposed in neat manila folders and digital files. Travis had taken over $2 million from the estate. But worse, he had used my name in a false benefits scam involving disabled veterans. He'd filed documents claiming I was permanently injured and then redirected the checks to one of his accounts. It was sickening. Delia was the architect of most of the paperwork. Harold? He'd shielded them both, all while collecting a cut through his firm. And the forged video they used in court? Staged. A paid actress. Recorded in the same parking garage I'd used weeks earlier. "They're desperate," Agent Price said. "They didn't expect you to fight back." But I wasn't interested in just fighting back anymore. I wanted to end this. We coordinated everything. The new court date, the transfer of jurisdiction, the federal charges. All of it had to be done carefully and publicly, because people like Travis, they don't run unless they feel the walls closing in. So we made the walls move. The next day, I walked into court again, this time not as a victim, but as the lead witness in a federal case. The gallery was standing room only. Travis arrived late, red-eyed and sweaty. His lawyer whispered frantically to him as he slid into his seat. Harold was pale. Delia didn't show up at all. The judge, a new one, appointed after the last one was removed for bias, looked through the thick files on his desk. "What we have before us is no longer a simple inheritance dispute," he said slowly. "We have a pattern of criminal behavior, coordinated fraud, and multiple attempts to discredit a decorated veteran and former officer of the United States military." I didn't smile. Not yet, because it still wasn't over. My statement took 2 hours. I told everything, from the will being changed, to the threats, to the forged documents, to the night someone tried to lure me into an alley with a fake delivery notice taped to my door. And then I handed over the biggest piece of evidence. A hard drive. On it, a recorded Zoom call between Delia, Travis, and Harold, planning how they'd make Rachel look unstable, and discussing how even if she fought back, nobody would believe a sniper with PTSD. The room went silent when it played. Even the stenographer paused her typing. That was my moment. That was justice, not in full, but close. But just when it seemed like things were finally turning, something unexpected happened. The judge nodded, closed the file, and said, "We will reconvene next Friday to begin the formal arraignment of the defendants." As I walked out of the courtroom, surrounded by cameras and microphones, a uniformed officer pulled me aside. "Commander Dawn," he asked quietly. "Yes." "There's something you need to see. It's about Delia Moore." I followed him down the hall, away from the press, into a small holding room where Agent Price was waiting. "She's missing," she said without preamble. What do you mean missing? Her condo is empty. Passport gone. Bank accounts drained. Security footage shows her boarding a private flight 2 nights ago. We believe she's fleeing, but I thought we froze her assets. We did, but she had help. Someone with access to accounts we didn't see. I frowned. Travis. We don't know, but someone else may be involved. Someone bigger. I sat down hard in the plastic chair. Just when I thought it was almost over, another piece slipped out of reach. She can't disappear, I said. She knows too much. She won't get far, Price replied. But until we find her, we don't know how much damage she can still do. The next day, I found a note on my windshield, tucked under the wiper blade. Neat handwriting. Delia's not your biggest problem. Stay quiet, Rachel, or you won't see the next one coming. No return address. No fingerprints. Just that warning. I called Agent Price immediately. She was already 1 step ahead. Someone inside Denton's law firm has gone dark. A junior partner named Ellis Clay disappeared the same day Delia boarded her flight. The circle was expanding. I looked out the window that night, watching the rain blur the streetlights. My phone buzzed with messages from reporters, friends from the Navy, even a few strangers online saying they were proud of me. But I wasn't proud yet. Not until every last person who tried to erase me was exposed. Not until I made them all face the truth. And then my phone buzzed again. Unknown number. 1 message. I hope you like the spotlight. You're about to be the star of your own downfall. I stared at the screen and smiled because they still didn't understand. You don't threaten a sniper. You just give her a target. I didn't sleep that night. The message stayed on my screen, burning into my eyes like a brand. Not from Travis. Not from Delia. This was someone new. Someone still hiding in the shadows. But they made a mistake, they warned me. And when you warn a sniper, you give her time to load the rifle. By morning, I was already in motion. I contacted Agent Price, sent her the text, and forwarded every unknown number I'd received in the last 72 hours. She looped in cybercrime experts, who started tracking the signal. Meanwhile, Gina was preparing for the final court showdown. The feds were ready. Arrest warrants had been issued. Travis was under full surveillance. Harold had already tried to negotiate a plea deal, offering to turn over everything if charges were dropped to fraud, and he kept his license. They told him no. He wasn't getting out of this. But Delia was still gone. And now, this Ellis Clay, the junior partner from Harold's firm, had vanished too. That's when we got a break. Agent Price called that afternoon. We traced the message to a burner phone purchased just outside Jacksonfield, she said. And it wasn't Ellis. Who was it? I asked. Someone connected to your father's estate. A name we haven't seen before, but it turns out they've been pulling strings quietly for years. She paused. An old friend of your father's. Business partner. Retired colonel. Name's Dennis Holloway. I froze. I remembered that name. He used to visit when I was a kid. Always wore crisp polos and shiny boots. My dad called him Denny. Said they served together, but I never trusted him. Something in his eyes always felt off, like he was smiling, but his thoughts were 10 steps ahead. He's been listed as a silent trustee on the estate since your father's final amendment, Price continued. And get this, he authorized the financial power of attorney change that gave Travis access to your accounts. How? I asked, voice low. Your father trusted him. Signed the authority over years ago in case of emergency. But when your dad got sick, Holloway swooped in and started changing things. My stomach turned. It wasn't just family betrayal. It was war on a personal level. We weren't just talking about legal theft anymore. This man had manipulated my dying father, used that trust to help Travis drain the estate, maybe even orchestrated the campaign to erase me from records. Possibly more. Price's voice was sharp now. We need to get you back to court. Now, we're unsealing everything. This goes beyond a civil case. This is national fraud with military pensions and identity theft. You're the key. That afternoon, I walked back into the courtroom for what I thought was the last time. Cameras were everywhere. News vans lined the street. Reporters shouted my name. A crowd had gathered outside, holding signs, some cheering, some just curious. One even held a cardboard cutout of a Navy SEAL patch with the words, "We stand with Rachel." Inside, it was even more packed than before. Travis sat on one side, sweat dripping down his temple. His new lawyer looked overwhelmed. Harold was no longer there. He'd been arrested that morning. The judge took the bench. "Today," he began, "we moved to trial proceedings based on new evidence submitted by federal investigators. The civil case is now merged with criminal charges. Multiple parties will be arraigned today." Gina whispered in my ear, "This is it." Then the doors opened, and for the third time he appeared, Admiral Briggs. But this time he wasn't alone. He brought with him a group of officers. Each of them stood beside a government official holding boxes, evidence, files, proof. And then a final man entered, Dennis Holloway. He wore a suit, hands cuffed behind his back, escorted by 2 military police officers. The crowd gasped. Even Travis stood up, eyes wide. What the hell? Holloway didn't look at me, didn't look at anyone, just kept walking with a stiff neck and blank expression. The judge nodded toward Agent Price. She stood. "Your Honor, we now submit full records proving a coordinated scheme by Dennis Holloway, Harold Denton, Travis Dawn, Delia Moore, and others to erase the legal identity and financial access of Commander Rachel Dawn in order to steal over $4 million from military funds, personal accounts, and real estate holdings." The number hit the room like a bomb. $4 million. Price continued, "We also submit evidence that Holloway facilitated false claims on behalf of non-existent veterans, misused classified documents, and attempted to bury Commander Dawn's service history to protect his own assets and his partnership with Travis Dawn." The judge leaned forward, brows tight. "And the video?" he asked. Gina stood. "Your Honor, we have confirmed the video played in this court previously was fabricated using spliced audio and a body double. It was created by a digital contractor hired by Mr. Holloway's shell company." The judge turned red. He slammed the gavel. "Bailiffs, take Mr. Travis Dawn into custody." The courtroom exploded. Travis shouted, "No, this is a setup. I was tricked. I didn't." They cuffed him mid-sentence. He kicked at the floor, screaming as the crowd erupted into gasps and muttering. Gina leaned toward me and whispered, "We did it." But I didn't feel relief. Not yet, because Delia was still gone, and so was part of the truth. Later that week, I sat down with Admiral Briggs in a quiet room at a military facility. "You're going to get everything back," he told me. "Your name, your honor, the estate, every cent they took." "I don't care about the money," I said. "I know." He looked down at his hands. "You know, when we first pulled your records, I was furious." "Why?" "Because we almost lost you. You were buried, erased, and no one knew. Not even us." "I came home invisible," I said. "Not anymore." He stood and reached into his coat, handed me a small box. Inside it was a medal, not one I had ever seen before. "What is this?" "A new commendation. Just approved. For those who fight battles no one sees, on battlefields no one respects." I stared at it. A lump formed in my throat. He added quietly, "You're not a ghost anymore, Commander. You're a symbol." It should have felt like closure, but I knew better. Because that night, as I sat alone in my kitchen, sipping coffee, a package was delivered to my doorstep. No return label, no postage, just a box. I opened it slowly. Inside was a stack of legal files, foreign names, offshore transfers, military IDs. And on top, a single note, handwritten. "She's not done, and she's not alone." Delia, the war wasn't over, but now they knew who I was. And next time, they wouldn't see me coming.